Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent entertainment. I'm Jason Godby, and with me in the Rabbit Hole studio today, he is an Emmy award-winning producer and the co-founder of Footprint.tv, Mr. Frank Fernandez. Welcome, Frank.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you, man. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for schlepping to Brooklyn. We always appreciate it when people come down. So you've got quite a background, and we'd probably need like 3 or 4 shows to cover your history in television and so forth. But for just to familiarize, because we had Robin Adams, who is your co-founder of Footprint, on the show, and we learned about him. And so, but just to kind of familiarize people with you before we get into questions on producing and questions about Footprint, just tell us a little bit about you. Like, how did you get into this, and what is your origin story, so to speak?
I originally started out as thinking that I was going to be an educator. And the only job I could find was I grew up in Long Island, so Rockville Center. So I was working for the Rockville Center Recreation Department. So I was basically teaching kids how to play soccer. Anyway, so I couldn't find a job. So I'm sitting at a bar late one night. Guy I played baseball with in high school came in, and he offered me a job. He said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm saying, "Pretty much nothing." And he goes, "You want to work on you want to go to work on a set? I'm looking for PAs for a film." So I was like, I didn't know anything about film. I didn't know even what a production assistant did or was going to do. So I said, all right. It was like 3 a.m. I went home, showered, met him back at the train station, Long Island Railroad, 4 a.m. And that's where my media career took off, and I started from there.
You literally started from the bottom, like you started as production assistant, sort of the lowest man on the totem pole. Yep. Were you like a big movie fan, or like were you?
I was a big movie fan. Yes.
Okay. So you had like a passion for it. It wasn't.
I had a passion for television. I mean, all throughout college and even high school and growing up, I grew up in those, the wacky CBS comedies, Green Acres, Hee Haw, all that stuff. And I loved Lucy like everybody else. And I loved Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball, Desi Lou. So I always had a passion and but I looked at it as a hobby. It was never, I was one of those, as a kid, I was one of those kids that stayed up late, snuck out just to watch old Westerns.
Give us a little bit of your resume in terms of, because you spent 20 odd years at NBC?
28.
And what types of shows were you working on?
Well, I worked on all sorts. I mean, late night, prime time. I was one of the first, I produced the first digital music show for NBC called The Scene at Gibson. Didn't last very long, but but that showed me, that was a great, unique thing. I produced 3 albums for the Today Show concert series. So I got to, dabble in music, which was kind of hard. I was, one of the original production folks at NBC Records when it launched. So I got to do a lot of things. I mean, sort of like I found my niche by not finding my niche. But again, I started from the ground up, so I really knew the ins and ends, the odds and ends, and how, as the old guys used to talk, always learn how the wires connected on both ends. So that's how I went through NBC and life, really, in the media business. I've always tried to understand how each wire is connected. There's a beginning and an end, and in the middle. So once you know, knowledge is power. Stick around.
And that's how you get work in this job, because they will hire the guy who knows things. They will hire the guy who's like, oh, you can do this, this, and this. Well, let me make you an editor on this project, and let me make you a producer on this project. And that's even happening more and more now.
My whole intent was like Desi Arnaz. I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to be the entrepreneur. I wanted to look, listen, and learn. But I'm Cuban after all, and we're raised to own. So, that's the mindset. And, so I had every intention of, I guess I stayed way too long at NBC, but I'm glad I did. It was a wonderful 28 years.
And you were able to work, because you were sort of like this utility infielder, you were able to work on stuff like sports and also fictional narrative sitcoms.
Well, I started in sports.
Yeah.
I dabbled some in entertainment, but, that's back in the day when, there was no Yes. It was MSG where the Yankee games were. Mm-hmm. And then they did Sports Channel. So I worked for the Mets, which was my team. So that, I thought I had already reach a pinnacle just by being at Shea Stadium and
Right.
you know, in the booth with Ralph Kiner and Tim McCarver, you know, having them, watching them smoke cigars there and just talk about the old days of baseball. It was wonderful. So I spent a good portion with them. And then I started at the racetrack. When I graduated, I was subbing for a guy who I had met at Sports Channel himself, and he was working 7 days a week as the racetrack season in New York and Belmont. So I subbed for him, and then I started producing graphic packages for, you know, TVG, which is still around. And so I learned horse racing, and I worked for a wonderful man named Harvey Pack, who showed me more about television, even though he was not a television guy. He was a commentator, NBC chose him for the first Breeders' Cup, and he took me along. You know, some kid, you know, green as I was, and I was fortunate enough, and we went to Santa Anita for the very first Breeders' Cup, and from there I just segue into the operations, and so I worked at sports for a bit, and then I got I was offered a full-time job in the operations and scheduling, and I took it, and I ended up scheduling just about every individual at NBC, every facet of scheduling and operations. I was there for about, I don't know, 5 years, and then I got into the entertainment business from there as a scheduling coordinator. So I scheduled the promos.
And you were saying before, like, this is the work that not a lot of people want to do.
No.
Because it's not fun, it's not creative, you know.
No, and you work with creative people, but it's not creative. But but it was a valuable lesson because I understood, again, how the wires were connected, A and B. Once I understood how NBC worked, I was able to maneuver at NBC in a place where it's very hard to maneuver because you're always pigeonholed. So I never stayed in one job long enough to be pigeonholed. I kept reinventing myself. And because I reinvented myself, opportunities were arising. And you know, let's face it, I mean, I always wanted to work at NBC. I mean, I didn't know it at the time. It was a dream come true for me.
Sure.
So once I had that dream, it's like, you know, it's the best example is, you know, when you become a producer, there is no other step. You're a producer. That's it. That's the ceiling.
Where are you going to go from
where
that?
Where are you going to go?
Exactly.
I mean, so you go show to show to show.
Right.
You know,
and if you can do one show, then, well, he's suited for this, so he can do this show.
If you're good enough,
you know,
yeah. I mean, you're good enough.
The
pinnacle of producing is clearly, you know, creating, developing, and producing your own.
Right. Did you ever get to do that?
I've always done that. Yeah. Footprint is the first example. You know, Cena Gibson was a collaboration, but it was a lot of my vision. And you know, and I got into promos, and I advise everybody. That's the quick. You know how catcher is the quickest way to the major leagues, they say.
Really? Okay.
Yes. Well, advertising and promotion at a network is the quickest way to the major leagues, because you learn so much from writing to producing and creating a 5-second, 10, 15, 20-second spot. So that's an art in itself.
Now, when you say promotion,
advertising, like a promo, you see promos on cable.
So the people that run promos for the network, not the promos
Yes.
that the network buys, but the stuff that's done
No,
internally.
the networks don't buy promos. The network creates promos. That is the biggest way and the most targeted way that they get their audience. That's how if you don't even realize it, like even Netflix has promos. Everybody has promos. Like a trailer is a promo.
Right.
You know, the network's promos, well, now it's different. But when I was there, it was, you know, you did promos under the promo or advertising and promotion category. You had trailers came under that, show opens, interstitials, ads.
So you're doing all of that little connective tissue in between shows, and you're
that's all considered advertising and
if
promotion.
they want to move one show to, you know, like it was on Tuesdays, but now it's on Saturdays.
That's a promo department.
And you're kind of to do that stuff. You got to be you're producing, but like producing means writing, directing, all that stuff.
Yeah, it's the one-man band. You know, you usually had a PA and stuff.
How many for something like that? How many promos are you creating, like in a given production season?
Well, it's a whole day. It's a whole day. I mean, it's a whole, you know, you're doing one show, basically you're assigned one show. Again, I don't know how it is now, but you were assigned one show, and then you created a different promo for that one show. So we started with, like, you know, a 60-second, and then we do cut downs.
Right.
You know, that was my big break. I got into that area, and I learned so much about production and so quickly. From there, I started doing longer format from there.
So you were able to start with this smaller form, because I feel like it's like short films, like they're a great starting ground, or commercials, because if you can tell a story in 30 seconds, you can tell a story in an hour and a half,
Exactly.
or an hour. Like
Exactly. I mean, you could tell. I mean, think about it.
It's
Think
so
of-
hard to
think
do-
about these
to get a
network-
good story that
Think
way.
about these network promos. I mean, the other thing at the networks was the laughable thing was that the promo department was always counted as the filler. So if a movie came in short, the promo department was expected to create something to fill the 60-minute void.
Right.
Because it's either 30 or 60.
everything's in blocks on a
Yes,
network when
because
in programming.
advertising is sold that way. So
Right.
they'll sell advertising, but if they can't, like some things are not sellable, if that's a word.
Right.
So so they would depend on the promo department to come up and fill that 15 minutes, or that, and that's when we would fill it with like a Conan segment.
Right.
From a previous show or something, or just a Letterman at the time too.
And that's a great method of storytelling too, because you're trying to figure out, well, what goes well with this particular show, the audience that I want to get to for this particular program that's going to be on.
Yeah, we're talking. Back then, NBC was wretched. It was like that was pre-Friends. That was pre-Cheers.
Before the must-see TV era.
Yeah, the
kind of
must-see
thing.
TV. I was there for that. That was one of my bosses who created must-see TV.
So for Footprint, getting back to that, so you spent a long time working in corporate TV. You spent a long time working for a network, and how did that lead you to kind of forming your own OTT network?
So a lot of the creative stuff we do, old school, is created like in bars, over napkins. Like we would go out, again, I don't know how people do it now, but back in the day, it's like we had offices, but we felt comfortable in a creative environment, whatever that was. So, that would be usually have a drink, and we'd sit around and just talk about everything, and then all of a sudden we'd zero in on the topic, and then the creating, and then we'd just start dabbling on napkins. And, and to this day, Robin, who you had on the show a couple months ago, we're both old school that way. So we'll sit there, and then, we just start creating off napkins, storyboarding, and then next thing you know, we're shooting. And Footprint story is similar, but a little different. So I was in the Hamptons. This is right after I had left NBC for like the 30th time. This was 2015, I want to say. So I'm sitting in the Hamptons at the beach with my girlfriend and her daughters at the time, and they were walking on the shore picking up shells. And I was watching, it was very early in the morning, I was watching them, the little girls jumping up and down on the sand with the imprint of their footprint. And, then I reached out for, because we were doing a picnic, so I reached out for a napkin, and I started scribbling like their feet, and I'm not a drawer whatsoever, but, and then the X's and O's kind of thing. And then I'm like, they came back, and I said, they're asking me, like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm coming up with something, put your imprint on the sand again. And, they're 5 and 6 at the time. They're like, you're being silly. That's lame kind of thing.
Right.
So I was like, and then the water started going over it. The ocean started going over the footprint. So it's like, wow, interesting. I got to do something with this. So, you have a creative spark, but you don't know where it's going, and you don't know what it is. So, I call Robin Adams. I'm like, I got this idea, and I don't know, the girls tell me it's lame, but, I can't get it out of my head. It's a footprint imprinted in the sand with the water running out. And he goes, the ocean has no boundaries. And he goes, that's really interesting. Let me call you back. At noon, he had the graphic for Footprint.
Oh, cool.
TV, no boundaries.
We spoke to Robin a bit about Footprint and kind of what it's about, and definitely check out that episode if you haven't seen it, Robin C. Adams episode. He's another one of these guys with an extensive background in TV, and he's kind of done it all, like Frank. But for people who didn't see that episode, what is Footprint? Footprint's an OTT network, right?
Yes. The way I like to describe it is, it's like Netflix for indie artists. That's really what it is. 30 plus channels, free entertainment. The app is free. Footprint networks, you can get anywhere, and it really what it is just it's an incubator for talent. We have everything from news, sports, well not news, but lifestyle, you name it, we have it on Footprint.
How are you guys now? Because it's been a little while since I had Robin on the show, but what are you guys doing now for creators, and how are you helping them kind of get their shows out there? And if I'm a creator looking to have a channel on Footprint, what's the advantage of that? Why am I doing that as a creator?
First of all, it's distribution, and distribution's king no matter what you do in this business. And we just don't greenlight everybody. If you go on footprint.tv, you'll notice that there's a consistency to footprint.tv. It looks good and it sounds good. We just don't greenlight any Tom, Dick, or Harry. And what we look for is innovation, not only just in technology, but also in creating. And again, the subject matter really doesn't matter on Footprint. It could be a novella. It could be, it could be a sports show. It could be a documentary.
It just has to be quality.
Has to be quality. It has to be quality. It has to look good and sound great. Because you know what? After all, it's our names are attached to this.
So it's not like a Vimeo or a YouTube or something. It's not one of those kind of like where anybody can upload. So you're actually greenlighting shows, and then you guys also help people advertise their shows.
Well,
and help them get the word out, so to speak.
We have a marketing agency. They're based out of Atlanta, Georgia. It's run by EndavoMedia.com. Endavo, thank you, Paul Hamm, for supporting the dream. He's the CEO of Endavo Media. And they have a marketing agency which markets. Now, how Footprint works as a business is there's three ways. I'll take Café con Leche, for instance, a show I produce. That Café con Leche is basically David Chappelle meets The View.
Okay.
And it's shot like a lot like Curb Your Enthusiasm, where I'll come up with a topic, and Ashley North from Orange Is the New Black is on it, and she's thank God she's on it. She's very creative, very talented. She's one of the hosts, and Willie Background, who I met on a Marvel set, is stand-up comedian, and he's the other co-host. So Willie's an example of what Footprint's all about. As Ashley is normal, I want to say, and the logical one, the straight person, Willie's out there, like crazy-ass comedy. He'll come up with skits, and then he'll run it by me, and and then he'll shoot them. He'll shoot them himself. He'll direct them. He'll write them. Mm-hmm. And then he has a cast of thousands, usually like background artists he'll meet on a set or whatever, and then he recreates and reenacts these little short story skits, like a lot like David Chappelle, and they could be anything. So we will insert them in each episode. Then that episode of Café con Leche basically runs around that skit.
Do you have guests on the show as well? Does she interview people?
We have guests on the show. It's a show that's shot a lot like our backgrounds. So like we can't guess because it's New York, and Hollywood guests are hard to get. So what we do is we'll wrap Café con Leche episodes around events, charities, around synergy with other networks, other channels on Footprint, and we'll do episodes like, for instance, we just say Yes for Hope, which is a charity by Susan Lindley, who is based out of Houston, Texas, I believe, or Dallas. It's about providing cancer treatment for those who can't afford it. Mm-hmm. So we're a big backer of that. And I will create an entire event around her charity. So we'll do like an episode of Café con Leche, and we do like a parody on the red carpet. So we take it very serious about the cancer. So our guests for that day, and we come up with skits, are cancer survivors.
Okay.
So we'll have an entire, this year we did 3 episodes with Susan Lindley's group, Say Yes for Hope. And with cancer survivors, and we allow the cancer survivors. The episode is we allow the cancer survivors to be the content, so they tell their story. And Willie and Ashley are very supportive, and Ashley's a big supporter of this charity, and they come on and they tell their story, and then Willie will do a skit with them. So it's very much live.
So you have like it's very free form. It sounds like
Very free form.
Very cool.
And they are the guests and they are the stars.
And
of
this
each
is
episode.
one of the shows that you developed. Do you have other shows on the network as well?
We have for the most part, Robin and I are very hands-on particular channels, and we're definitely when call to arms when there's channels that will ask us. Each show is a channel on Footprint.
Okay.
So when we have a channel, they're independently shot and produced for the most part. Every once in a while, they'll have us come on board and help us produce an episode, like Live It Up, Donna Drake show. That's a CBS show. I've produced some segments for her and some episodes. New York City Web Fest.
Mm-hmm.
Lauren Atkins' channel. That's one of our newest ones. We produced a good portion of the festival for her, Robin and I. Again, my specialty is live, and Robin's specialty is news.
Right.
So we combine our specialties together, and we create, a lot of what Footprint is all about. And even Paul Hamm is involved in NYC Web Fest.
I'm hoping to have Lauren on the show. Actually, it's at some point.
She's very funny.
She's great.
She's
I got to get going. I got to wrap up pretty soon. But quickly, can you give me if somebody's looking to produce content or somebody's looking to make television, what advice would you give somebody looking to get? Either they're coming from the indie film world, or there's someone like me who's currently looking for networks to pitch and create shows. What would you say is the best kind of ladder to get in that world?
Look, there's no one way. First, let's just look at me. I am 3 a.m. Who the hell would have thought that I was being in this business? Last thing I ever thought. I thought it was a hobby. So there's an example of just being in the right place at the right time. But then also making it work. So my advice is there is no one way. Without being crude or rude, because that never works, or a bull in a china shop, because that never works. You need to understand that this is not show friends, this is show business. You need to understand the business of what you're getting into. And it's not the fun way or the most, creative way, but you need to understand that you're getting into a business. And, and people are going to be ruthless, and people are going to be, harsh. It's a hard world, media business. But if you understand the way it works, and if you understand the business side of things, you will always win. Knowledge is power, like everything else. The more you know about something, the more powerful you get to be.
And how do you get that knowledge? Just by talking to people and networking and so forth?
Being on sets. You know what? Never put down anything. I hear all the time, people, who wants to do background? You know what? Background I've done background. Being on a set gives you carte blanche to the greatest lesson. You're going to learn a lot in school, but but being in school is one thing, and being on a set is a totally different world. You understand etiquette, you understand protocol, and everything is etiquette and protocol in television and filmmaking. It's the same thing. Different worlds, but yet the same. So understand, getting on a set, background, you do background, you get paid to learn. Advertising and promotion is another quick way to understanding how the business works. You want to be creative, be in advertising and promotion. And when you ace that, move on to the next thing. That's how, I told the story. I told you the story.
Yeah.
I was started in advertising and promotion. That's how I got to be creative.
And kind of be willing to work your way up the ladder. I think that's kind of what's missing in the current generation, is that the eagerness to get your foot in a door and work your way up. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like
I agree.
Also think everything's changing now. So the way you came up is definitely different than the way people are going to come up now, because television isn't television anymore. It's not what it used to be. And a lot of things with streaming. And then for someone like you with Footprint, you can create your own show. But like it's, when Robin was here, you just talked about like make it quality. Make great picture, great sound, good content.
Exactly. And I agree with them 100%. I mean, if you have to pass a litmus test, whether it's us and I'm, and you have to be humble and understand something that, you know what, you don't know everything, and not everybody does. And just because I'll be on a set and people are it's a young generation, and they'll look down on people that are older, and it's like, you know what, people that are older, I learned from the golden age of television. Those guys. I thought they were full of it and all that. But then as I grew older, I'm more mature, and I realized, damn, what a lesson I learned. I learned more from those guys than I did in grad school. And, and I majored in communications and television and production.
But there's nothing like the practical experience of actually seeing it and talking to people who have actually done it.
Absolutely.
That's
and at the highest levels.
This is why I have this show, because I'm always learning as well. And I want people who know what they're talking about to be able to inform the audience, and from a practical perspective, not in theory, but in actual practice.
Absolutely, absolutely. Theory is only going to get you so far. I mean, you need to be humble enough to get on a set, however you can get on a set. And then when you're on a set, look, listen, and learn, and don't talk. And just because you learned something in school in a book doesn't mean you're ever going to use it in a production environment. And that's my advice. I mean, you got to be humility and humble. And if it means getting a cup of coffee, but you're watching whomever direct an episode of whatever for a network, that's millions of dollars. You get on that set because
every experience is a learning experience.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to wrap up. But if people want to find you, where can they find you on the web?
Footprint.tv. I mean, come down, join the app. It's free. It's anywhere you want. And, I'm on Instagram. I'm, Frank Fernandez, Frank J. Fernandez. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on everything.
So I'm going to wrap, but thanks for coming, man. I really appreciate it. It was a good talk. And thank you all for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more episodes of this show, you can always find them on our website, norestfortheweekendpodcast.com. You can also subscribe to us on all the major podcast channels. Please do give us a like, rate, and subscribe there. Once again, I just want to thank my guest, Frank Fernandez. Thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
And for Behind the Rod Productions, I'm Jason Godby. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.